We're going to be looking at actually using DTS today, and I've broken it up into a few different examples of ways that you can use the system. I've learned over the last 2 years after talking with prospects and customers about how their process works and how they've applied it to DTS. I've come up with a few examples I think will be really helpful. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. And first, I'm going to do a little bit of dashboard review for those folks that haven't used the system yet. And if you didn't attend the first session, I just want to remind you that you can access the global dashboard from the Wolters Kluwer button in the upper left. If you scroll down to distribution tracking, global dashboard is the first option here. And our global dashboard shows us everything in progress for every single plan in your account. So you get a nice global view of everything that's in progress. And remember that you can sort on any of these column headers. You can also apply filters by using the options at the top of the page. There's a status filter, date range, and you can also filter on the name of the person, the type of distribution, and the plan name. And then the bottom right, those results can be exported into Excel if needed. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and access a plan dashboard. I could do that from my global dashboard just by simply clicking on the name of the plan. But I'm going to show you an alternate route. When you are logged in and you're looking at the home page, you're just going to click on the name of your plan, and we are working in the distributions module today. So I'll click that button, and this will take you to your plan dashboard. So this is going to show me everything in progress for just my plan, CARES Act Sample 401k plan. The first scenario that I want to walk through with you guys is electronic data collection. So this is great if you're doing a force out campaign, plan term, anytime you use an a generic distribution election form. So it's not a form from a record keeper, it's one that you've created or perhaps one that you pulled from our document software. You can completely replace the paper process. This works great for brokerage accounts, balance forward plans. You can completely replace that paper process if you don't want to use paper anymore. So that is going to be my first example. And one of the things that I need to do first is I need to make sure that my portals are turned on. If you attended last week's webinar, I went over how to do that. Just a little refresher, if we click on specifications and then click distribution specifications, we're going to make sure that number 1 and number 3 are TPA, plan sponsor, and participants. So this tells me that my plan sponsor and my participant portals are on. So now that I've verified that, I can actually start adding a distribution. So over on the right where it says Start Request, I'm going to click Distribution, and I'm going to begin entering the name of my participant. If the participant already exists in the system, the information will pre-populate. A couple of things to note. You can upload your participants if you wanted to. So if you wanted to load their name, SSN, date of birth, contact information into the system prior to getting started, you can definitely do that. You don't have to do that. If you're using the compliance software, anybody that exists in the compliance database will automatically exist here. So their name will pre-populate as you're typing it in the box. So because I've already have Rory in the system, that's why his name has appeared for me. And when this record opens, here on step 1, this shows me information that the system already knows about Rory. So it's pre-populating anything that was already in the system. Maybe you had another distribution record last year. You don't have to start from scratch. It'll pre-populate it. So on step 1, participant profile, we have our basic information, our address, contact information. It is important that you put that participant's email address in here. So if the participant is going to be doing data entry through the portal, we need to have an email address. Another thing to mention too is that if you give the plan sponsor access to initiate a distribution, or you give the participant access to initiate a distribution, they could actually initiate it themselves rather than you doing it, which is what I'm describing right now. So this is me initiating as a TPA. Under employment information, in this section in particular, This is going to be editable for you and the plan sponsor through the portal. For the participant, however, only the reason for the distribution is going to be editable. Everything else will be locked. It's just there for them to review it. Marital status, this is a question that can be turned off in the specifications. If it's not a question you need to ask, you can shut it off. Otherwise, if you do ask the question and the participant indicates that they are married, by default, our software is going to give them a spousal consent to download. If you don't want to use the FT Williams spousal consent, you can upload your own through the specifications. And again, we went through specifications last week. So you can shut that off, or if it's on, you can upload your own spousal consent so that the participant can download it. The address for mailing that spousal consent back is also pulled from the plan specifications. I'm going to go to step 2 now, the distribution details. And in here, again, if you do use the compliance software, all of the stuff I'm highlighting here is going to populate from the compliance system. I always get the question, well, what if I haven't done testing yet and the data is out of date? No problem. Go ahead and overwrite it. So if you're using compliance, yes, it'll be here. You can overwrite it. If you're not using compliance, you can add it. This stuff up here, though, this stuff that's pulling from compliance or that you're manually entering, only you will be able to edit those fields. When the plan sponsor and the participant are in the portal, those fields are just there for viewing. They can't make any changes to them. The requested amount is going to be editable for everyone. I'm actually going to leave that blank, and I'm going to add it as a participant for an example today. Finally, this source balance button, if you want to break your balance down by sources, you can do that in here. This is available to everybody, whether you're using compliance or not. If you're using compliance, it will pull what's in the transaction menu into here for you automatically. But just like the other fields I mentioned, everything's editable. And ultimately what the software will do is it's going to calculate your gross distribution amount based on whatever you enter in here. This involuntary checkbox, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later on. We use this for force-out campaigns. So if you need to indicate that a particular record is part of a force-out campaign or it's a force-out scenario, by checking this box, what it's actually going to do is put a little green circle with a check mark in it on your dashboard. You can kind of see it there in the background. It's just an indicator. You can sort on it, and then we can program notifications to remind us when we need to force someone out. The drop-down box underneath that is where the participant can indicate where they want their money sent. I'm actually going to leave this blank, and I'm going to fill that out as a participant. And then the self-directed brokerage account. So if there is no SDBA in the plan, just check the no radio button. If there is, however, we have a placeholder or a spot to add the information for account name and account number. If you attended last week's webinar, this data can be pulled into a template with a placeholder. So if you're doing a custodial directive, for example, and you need to pull in that information, this is where the software is going to pull it from. The next section is the 1099 data. So this is actually hidden from the participant as well. This is just for you guys to view. And in here, a couple of things that are important to mention. The gross distribution amount will populate based on what you have above in the source modal. And then the other thing that it's going to do is it's going to calculate the primary code for the 1099. So if you guys are using our 1099 software, we do predict that code for you, but you have the ability to overwrite it if you think it should be something different. So everything in this box is used on the 1099. If you're not preparing the 1099, go ahead and skip whatever you don't need to fill out. And that's actually why we made this section collapsible, because some of our customers do the 1099, some don't, so you can hide it if you don't. Another thing I should mention, kind of along the same lines, if we're asking for information in the record and you don't typically track it, skip it. The software is not going to stop you from progressing to the next step if you don't fill everything out. Under taxes, loans, and fees, again, going back to last week's training session, this is all customizable, what outputs here. So you can have this section removed, you can pick and choose what applies here. It's all driven by the specifications. So I can edit any of this if I want. It's going to be output in a viewable format for the plan sponsor and the participant. The only thing that the plan sponsor and participant can edit is the additional federal or the additional state. And again, you can turn it off. Last thing, down here at the bottom, we have the option to upload a file for the participant or plan sponsor to download through the portal. We can upload that now, but we're actually going to focus on this section a lot in my second case. For now, we're just strictly focusing on electronic data collection. So last thing I'm going to do is click the Continue button. And a couple of things to note in here. Over where it says Missing, if I click on Show All 17, I just want to show you that the software gives you a comprehensive list of anything that's still outstanding. So rather than you guys clicking through each of those steps, you can just see what's missing right here. And again, just because it says it's missing doesn't mean you have to add it. It's just showing you which fields haven't been completed. You can also assign it to somebody. So maybe you initiated the record, but then it goes to somebody else for processing. You can reassign it at this point if you want. And then down at the bottom of the page, when I hit Continue, that is the point where the software will automatically email the participant, inviting them in to do data entry. Before I do that, though, I just want to point out, let's say, for example, that typically on this plan, you do invite the participant and the plan sponsor to the portal. So you're using the portal, but let's say you've got someone who calls and they just refuse to do electronic data collection because they know that's going to happen, and you need to skip them in the portal. Maybe you still want to collect information from the plan sponsor via the portal. What you can do is just verify on behalf of the participant, and by doing that, it skips them for data collection. So rather than the software emailing the participant, it's going to skip the participant and go straight to the sponsor. And then when the sponsor's done, it will come back to you. So all I want you to take away from that is that you have control here. So if normally you do use the portal, but for this instance, you don't need to, you can skip it. So by hitting Continue, what's going to happen is the software is going to add the record to the dashboard for me. So I'm going to close this, but before I do that, I want you to see it says all done. This distribution request is being sent to the participant for input and verification. So I'm going to close that, and now you see Rory is up here. It's a termination. There's my involuntary checkbox that I marked. It gives me that check mark. It shows me that the status is needs participant input, shows me when I added it. Assigned to me, so all of that's been added. What I'd like to do at this point is log in as the participant. So now I am the participant and it's my turn to do data entry. Before I do that though, I just want to open up this record. I'm going to go to this link called View Activity. This is our audit trail. And you'll notice that emails that are being sent from the system, so if it's an email to fill something out, if it's an email reminder, anything that's sent from the system automatically is logged in your audit trail. You can see when the participant was invited, for example, and you can also see all of your data entry and the details of that data entry. So this shows the old value, which I had nothing in here because it's a brand new record, and then my new data. And then you can also add manual activity. So maybe you took a phone call outside of the system, for example, or maybe you had to send paper. You can make a note in here about that.